Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Not for Nothing. This is kind of like a two-parter. I am still with Jackee and Tom. We're at their wonderful house here in Richmond, Virginia. So I'm here with Jackee Sandelands. Can I call you that?
Yes, thank you. Good
Okay.
job. I'm getting all of it.
Exactly. If anybody didn't know, I make a habit of just referring to Jackee as Jackee Strom, and that's incorrect.
The ownership,
Yeah,
my God.
Oh, for fuck's sake. God damn, whatever. But it's Sandelands.
Yes.
What exactly is that? So actually, you know what? Before we get to that,
Okay.
Why don't you explain? Why don't you tell people who you are, where you're at?
As Joe introduced me, I'm Jackee Sandelands Strom. A lot of people know me as Sandelands because that's what I am on Instagram. I'm looking at the cameras.
No, you can look at the cameras. Look at me.
Okay.
I mean, whatever.
I'm a hyper-realist painter, and I specialize in acrylic painting. I've gotten back into tattooing recently, but that's kind of a lesser thing for me. Like, I'm known more as the painter. I tattoo nothing like the paintings, which surprises a lot of people.
We'll touch on that. Don't go too much into that yet.
Okay. That's all you get.
That's all you get. So you grew up in. So your dad was from the UK.
My dad was from England. He was from the from the Lake District, which is the northwest part of England, kind of right below Glasgow, Scotland. You can throw a rock and hit Scotland from where they lived.
So you're first generation.
Yep.
And that's how you were able to get dual citizenship and such?
Yes. I got dual citizenship later in life. My parents didn't opt for it when I was 18, but they kind of let me and my siblings all make a choice about getting it for ourselves.
Nice.
So
when did you you were born and grew up in?
I was born in America, and as a baby moved to England. And then we were a little bit back and forth, but mostly there up until I was probably like 12.
Oh, wow. So it was a while.
So. Yeah. And then back, somewhere around there.
That's why you got such a weird fucking mannerism and accent.
What the fuck are you saying?
Nothing is proper enough for you, basically.
Yeah, because I have standards, you mean?
Whatever.
Thank you.
Whatever. So you grew up in Minnesota?
Mostly in Minnesota. All the formative years, definitely Minnesota.
But not Minneapolis?
No, we were just outside of Minneapolis by maybe a half-hour drive or so in a place called Stillwater. And my mom is from Minnesota. My dad and mom met when he was traveling in America as a university student. Okay. And they were engaged in like 2 weeks. And
wow.
Yeah. Yep.
Nice. So you started out first as a tattooer then?
Yes. So when I graduated in 94. So that's 1994. As opposed to 18.
She looks amazing for her age.
I know, thank you. So at 18, those years though, there was a tattoo shop in downtown Stillwater that has gone through quite a few different people over the years, but at that point, the person that owned it and ran it was Lonnie Lindbergh, and I feel like he was with somebody, but it's a long time ago now, so I can't really remember. And I started getting tattooed there just with all the 90s, like, pick from the wall and get, like, this is my first little...
What is that, a mantra, or is that like a...
No, it's like one of those tiny little, like, Celtic vines.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So, yeah, I got that in high school, and then I just started... Well...
Sort of. And you got the half...
This is
and
my
she's got a half
scrapbook.
armband.
Yes, it's my scrapbook of time. Anywho, I started hanging out there more and more and more, and then eventually started apprenticing with him.
How old were you then at this point?
I mean, it's still 18.
Oh, wow. You got right into it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I was there all the time, and drawing. I've even got somewhere in the apartment drawings from back then, and it's
sweet.
all like tribal with like flowers behind it, which is coming around.
Oh,
so I might just bring them out again.
Exactly. Alethea's done that a couple of times. She's pulled flash that
really?
she had done when she was in Tennessee, and or actually it might have been Georgia before she moved to Tennessee.
I mean, it makes sense.
She'll pull it out every
it's
now
crazy
and again.
seeing it all.
Yeah, she tried to give us for St. Patty's Day. She had a bunch of Irish flash, like, St. Patty's Day flash. She's like, "You want my leprechaun flash?" I'm like,
How did you not use that?
well, she threatened to give it to me and then never did.
Oh, gotcha.
And then by that point, we were setting up for the show and everything.
Right.
So,
man, you should do a retro flash day.
we're planning on it. We're calling it White Trash and Barbecue.
Nice.
So we're going to set up. We're hoping to set up a barbecue set up outside with hot dogs and hamburgers. Simple. We're going to do beer and basically we're just going to set up a bunch of retro flash. Get a bunch of JD Crowe. So for me, retro is JD Crowe, Pinky Yoon, Jack Rudy. Like, I mean, I think it's all cool shit.
Yeah.
To me, like Cherry Creek, that happened well after we were already living in New Hampshire when I discovered Cherry Creek, and it wasn't it wasn't me looking for it or finding it. Alethea happened to have a bunch of it at her old shop, and when she moved to New Hampshire, she was printing stuff up for books, and she wanted to have it at the shop that she was working in.
Yeah.
So she brought it. I was helping her print them up at Kinko's or something like that.
I'm pretty sure all of the stuff at the shop that I started at was Cherry Creek.
So that's like that's another gen.
It was so very 90s.
Yeah. So that to me is like, see, it's like late 90s. I guess because Crow stuff to me,
late.
Well, because JD Crowe stuff to me was like late 80s to early 90s.
Right.
Because that's kind of when I started.
You're way older than me.
Oh, go. Be polite.
Right. Sorry.
Okay, so how long did you actually tattoo for?
I mean, then I didn't even get around to being able to tattoo yet. So he disappeared, and I can't really remember the circumstances in which he was gone for a little bit. And then I got pregnant and had my daughter.
Oh, shit, that's right. Okay.
And then from there, it was like I couldn't afford to do an apprenticeship, and I can't even remember. I mean, I started working actually for a bank, and then he ended up appearing again probably when I was like 21 and saying like, "Hey, I'm in Iowa, come down and work." And so I went down there and continued the apprenticeship, and we were in this tiny ass town called Carroll, Iowa.
Okay.
And it was, I mean, no offense to anybody from Carroll, Iowa or nearby, but it was a nightmare. I couldn't handle it at all. So I lasted maybe 6 months and was just like, I got to go back to a city. And so the only time I really tattooed there was on myself, and it was like
just
late
the
at
bare
night.
bones basics.
Yeah, and he was like, "All right, I'm leaving for the night. It's time for you to tattoo yourself." And I've got this like dragon on my thigh that's got, I don't know, 1 trillion scales in it, and like a wing that's floating in front of it.
So not the best. So basically, not the best first tattoo to.
No, God, it was so way too much to do on myself, and but that was it. And then from there, I came back to Minneapolis and worked more just in a regular like banking job. That's actually what I was doing when I met Tom Strom.
Okay. So did you ever really work full time for any length of time? So that's
not really until I met Tom.
So
it was like a long extended on and off apprenticeship.
On and off again. So what was like the longest clip that you actually did tattoo, even after you guys got together? Was it?
I mean, I guess at Saint Sabrina, I don't know. I mean, it was like years at a time, but not like years and years at a time.
So when did you decide to just because you had stopped tattooing for quite a bit?
So, okay.
Because I found out about you tattooing when we had gone out there, and I didn't know.
Yeah.
And then Tom mentioned like, yeah, Jack, because I'd seen a couple of the paintings around the house, and they were fucking gorgeous. I'm like, so Jackie's an artist? He goes, yeah, she used to tattoo. And I'm like, really? I was like, I had no idea.
Right. So I've always painted. But not on any capacity other than just for myself. And then when I met Tom, he like re-apprenticed me for tattooing. And then at this point, I mean, by this time I was, only still 24 years old. I was very young and flighty and in and out of everything.
Typical woman.
Yeah.
So oh, there's gonna be a bunch of those.
Yeah. I ended up at that point wanting to work creatively and not really, again, so Tom was willing to apprentice me, but I couldn't go to his shop and
this was at Sean's
This
place.
is when he was at Uptown Tattoo.
Oh, this is time. Okay, so this is at Uptown. Okay.
Yeah. But their shop was custom only, and it wouldn't have really been appropriate. And I don't know. It's probably just at that time and being a young relationship and everything, it maybe wouldn't have been.
And again, this is going to sound weird coming from me. There was a lot with guys bringing their girl into a shop and apprenticing her.
Insert eye roll here.
I just fucking said it was going to. Okay, so I'm making a fucking point. Thank you very much. My point being is, that was a thing that a lot of others, if you were working amongst 4 other guys and one of the dudes brought their wife in or girlfriend in to apprentice her, most people were going to have an issue with that.
Right. And
so what is
there was a lot of issues happening back then. The field has been classically sexist for a very long time, which I'm sure women across the board would share in that experience, especially if you started in the 90s and were continuing in the early 2000s. Yeah. It took until the TV shows came out to really kind of like elevate things a little more.
I think
equality.
Yeah, I did speak to Teresa about this, and we brought up like artists like Carrie Barber. I brought up like Julie Moon.
Right.
I mean, these are women that could swim with sharks.
Yeah.
And that's what set them apart from most of the women of. I shouldn't say that. From a handful of the women of today's tattooing that don't want to be dark, but they never had that.
Right.
There was never that portion. They never had to deal with that at all.
Yeah, and I mean, it was like if you were going to a tattoo shop to get tattooed, especially heavily tattooed as a young woman, you were going to deal with sexist comments and
or get leered at.
Not even that. Like if you were a heavily tattooed woman back then, the amount of like bullshit comments you would get for like, are you into pain? As from dudes, like, don't ask women that. Like, are you, asking if you're like a dominatrix? I mean, there was so much stereotyping that came with being in or around.
Well, you're also looking at, a different day and age compared to today.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, like
absolutely.
This would have been like
I would think nobody would dare ask that.
This would have been late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, up until the TV shows. What was the year of the first TV show?
2000. Well, I mean, you had Miami Ink, which was probably 2006, 2007, maybe.
So that's probably around when people started finding it to be a more normalized thing.
Yeah.
And they could accept anybody and everybody, including
well,
women.
there was always still, but even to that degree, I don't think things have opened up for women until like probably after 2014. When women started, I don't want to say women have are starting to dominate, but there are more now than there ever has been.
Well, now I think you can be a tattooer and be called a tattooer, or be a collector and be called a collector without the caveat being, and she's a woman.
Yeah.
Because back then it was still, and she's a woman. Like that has anything to do with
And there
anything.
was also a big thing, like I grew up on the island, and there was a shop called Peter Tattoo. And you had two women named Cindy. You had Big Cindy, Little Cindy, and you had Marguerite. Marguerite was an older woman who would probably be able to hold her own with artists like Julie Moon and Patty Kelly. And I mean, she was like a kind of an old school biker chick, but she did a lot of like single needle color tattoos, and I mean, she tattooed. And this goes out horrible, but she tattooed like a woman. And that was one of the things that a lot of the men tattooers.
See, now you're gonna have to explain that.
So tattooing like a woman back in the day meant, like
delicate,
thin, delicate.
Okay.
Fine line, single needle fine line work, and just really kind of washy colors, like very delicate.
Right.
You know what I mean? I'm not knocking. First of all, it wasn't meant as a shot.
No.
I'm referring to what people used to say.
In the 2024s, you would say she tattooed delicately.
Right. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about what was said back then.
Right. Okay.
Tattooed like a woman.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean?
So
and that was,
and
that's something I want to go out of. Yeah, exactly. That was something my wife might have said back then, in the sense that like she would take offense to it because people would look at it as like, oh, you tattooed like a woman, because it didn't look like a traditional old school tattoo.
So now, if I may bring it like forward to what I'm doing now, with tattoo or with painting. Yeah. A lot of people assume I'm a man.
In the paintings?
In the paintings.
Well, that's just ignorant, I think.
I
Because
mean,
how do
but
you...
are my paintings masculine?
No, well, that's my point.
Like,
how
is
do
it
you...
just because it's masculine subjects? I don't really understand, but it's a lot of like,
well, what
hey,
does that
bro,
say about
hey,
what does
dude.
that say about the guy who is making that assumption, or the woman that's making that assumption, for that matter?
Yeah, I mean,
know what I
okay,
mean?
so I had a comment from a woman that I can't remember what her name is, and she was trying.
She wanted to meet
be...
you because
no, she was trying to compliment the painting, and it was a painting that I had used my hands, and I've probably told you this before.
man hands.
My man hands and it was my hands holding a teacup, and her comment was that she liked the juxtaposition of the masculine hands with the feminine teacup.
I'm glad.
And I was like,
oh my
thank
God, that's fantastic.
you. Like
That is pretty amazing. So there's a little, and it's not a rivalry. It's a shitty thing that Jackee had said. Referring to my hands as being soft.
Baby hands.
What the fuck
Can
ever.
this pick up whispers?
So apparently I have very soft hands, baby hands, cherub. What the guy
Cherub,
said,
yeah,
cherub-like
cherub,
hands, cherub-like
yeah.
hands. And Jackee does not. Jackie's
No.
hands are like a
I
construction
know, we
worker.
really do have the opposites. I'm going to trade, although yours would be like the Jerry Seinfeld man hands on mine.
Yeah, exactly. You'd be like ripping pieces of bread, pulling that lobster apart.
Anyways, people for the paintings oftentimes assume I'm a man, and I've always wondered why. Like, just going back into feminizing and masculine.
Yeah, I think I honestly think that's kind of weird, because when you look at art, with the amount of, the differences in artists and whatnot, how can you make an assumption on anything based on somebody's work?
Yeah.
You couldn't make assumptions on people's appearances sometimes. You know what I mean? Like, so to assume that somebody is a man or a woman based on the style in which they work is just fucking silly. You know what I mean?
I do understand. I mean, even when you said she tattooed in a feminine way,
well,
and
again,
that it's like a delicate way, I understand how that gets associated with feminists.
Well, because this is why I said that. Back in the day, when you saw a tattoo that Marguerite had done, or one of the Cindys, not both. I'm not quite sure which Cindy was the more feminine of the two. I don't know, work-wise, I guess. But you could tell immediately who did it.
Right.
You know what I mean? There was one other guy on the island. Oh crap! I can't remember his name. His work was immaculate, like super clean, real delicate, and that you'd almost like confuse them, because everybody would assume that was Marguerite, and everybody knew it was a woman who tattooed the piece, whatever. Every now and again, you'd see something from this one cat.
Did they describe his work as feminine?
As being kind of, well, not so much effeminate, but you'd assume it was a woman who tattooed it.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it was
Isn't
not
that
because,
a funny thing?
well, but it's not, I don't think, to be honest, because nobody really did that unless you were copying something.
Right.
But if you did something like, oh yeah, they just drew it on, you just assume that whoever drew those roses on and tattooed them was a woman.
Right.
Because of the delicacy of it. But if you were to copy a piece of flash, like from someone like Julie Moon, or even if you looked at something like Jack Rudy's work, I mean, it's all single needle fine line stuff. You know what I mean? That stuff, Corey Miller's old stuff was like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So yeah, it had a quality and an appearance to it that didn't lend itself to being like an old school clunky tattoo that's tattooed in the back of a garage did.
Right. Yeah.
So like I said, I'm looking at it from a different perspective than you are, from a different day and
Well,
age.
and this is like historical tellings of what it used to be like versus now.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
now you would never be able to look at any work and be like, oh, that was done by a woman.
Oh no, and again, especially now, because you can't look at something like that because everybody is trying to emulate a particular style that has no real boundaries, has no real like if you want to tattoo realism, and what are you going to assume? Every realistic rose has been tattooed by a female?
Yeah.
Again, 20 years ago you might have thought, or 25 years ago, 30 years ago you might have thought that way. But nowadays that's silly because everybody has their own little niche.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think nowadays it's a different day and age. It doesn't even matter. It's not even going to come on. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
But it is weird
Thank
from a
goodness.
painting's perspective. Yeah, most certainly. But from a painting's perspective, it's strange to think that anybody could say, oh yeah, it looks like a broad did it,
Yeah, well, and so I think there's still some of the same things where maybe some work lends itself to read in a more feminine manner and some in a more masculine manner. I think my work is ambiguous. I don't think...
Fuck yeah, because you're tattooing or you're painting?
My paintings.
Yeah, because from that, the subject matter tends to tends to pull itself in so many different directions.
Yeah, and I think maybe there's still like a little bit of people always considering tattoos masculine. I paint a lot of whiskey, and people maybe consider whiskey masculine. It is not. It's a feminine thing as well.
Well, barely.
Cigarettes. I paint with cigarettes, and I think it's a lot of things that people for some reason are still just thinking in the, like, I don't know, 1950s of
so
what's
to me,
masculine and what's feminine.
I would look at it from the standpoint of not so much. I would look at maybe your audience as being maybe more masculine because they're going to be more attracted to that. But then you show...
Well, I've got
like
so many women that follow me and love my work, though. I mean, all the prints that I sent out today were to women.
Were to women.
Too, yeah.
What was the subject matter for most of them?
Let's see. One was the print that's the tools of the trade, so it's a tattoo machine on its own with the like line drawings behind it.
Okay.
One was one I really love that hasn't sold enough in my opinion, but it's one of those really big blocks of flesh. That's the boxer on it, which is just an old school tattoo. And the one that's actually a recreation of the painting that's behind you that I did of my own arm with a beer.
Oh yeah, that's a beautiful piece. Yeah.
Thank you. And then let's see. There's three more. So one was one I just did of Flip Shades, where he's smoking a joint.
Yeah.
And then also another one called OG Rolly, which is somebody rolling what is actually a cigarette, but it's when we're overseas and everybody in America assumes it's a joint.
Yeah.
But over there, their cigarettes are really expensive, so you mostly roll your own. And then, so I mean, the point being, I can't remember what the last one is right now, across the board of what you would consider feminine or masculine, like, you know, they're the same ones anybody would order, but all of the orders today were women buying them, which is awesome. If I looked on my Instagram, I do suspect that maybe I would have a more male followship than female followship, but I think that's also because like 95% of the people that follow me are tattooers, and I still think it's a male-dominated field.
So I think it's male-dominated voice-wise. I don't necessarily think that...
I'd be curious to see. I mean, it would be great if it was 50-50.
I mean, dude, I remember the first time I went... Well, not the first time, excuse me. One of the last times I went to the Calgary Convention in Canada.
Yeah.
And the amount of women tattooing in Canada apparently is dramatically larger than it is here in the States. Maybe. I don't know that for a fact. If anybody does know, leave it in the comments. We'd love to know. But yeah, I remember walking the floor at that convention and going... holy shit, there's a lot of women tattooing.
Right.
You know what I mean? And coming from my generation, that is weird.
Is that convention known for any one thing in particular, like style-wise?
No, it's just well, I mean, no, I'll be honest, I don't think so. I mean, this is, at that point, I think it was when color realism was already well entrenched. It's there, it's not going anywhere. Everybody wants to do it.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of color realism. Neo-trad was getting in big. This was years ago. But I remember walking the floor thinking, wow, there's a lot of women tattooing at this show.
That's awesome.
Like more than you'd ever seen in the States.
Huh. And the fact that you would notice that.
Well, that's exactly why I bring it up.
Yeah.
The fact that walking around, I went back to our booth and I went to Jimmy and I'm like, dude, do you realize how many women are here? He's like, what do you mean? I was like, women tattooers. And they're all tremendous. They're all phenomenal. Yeah. You know what I mean? So, and again, I know that sounds shitty, and it wasn't meant to be like, oh, well, she's a woman. She can't possibly be good. That's not how I meant it. I was genuine.
Like that.
Huh?
If anybody did think that, I don't think it sounded
people
like
go
that.
off. But I'll use that as a soundbite, so it definitely gets, like clickbait. But I was like, wow, this is fucking incredible. And here's the thing, too. Canadian tattoos in general are fucking amazing as well. You know what I mean? And I guess that could be said about a lot of places. I've said that about Australia recently. The amount of incredible talent coming from there, Eastern Europe, like
it's crazy.
It's hard to say. I mean, it's everywhere now. There's just so much talent. You know what I mean?
There's so much talent.
Yeah, it's frightening.
I mean, it's the boundaries have been pushed so far.
Well, it's funny. I think boundaries have been pushed, and people. And again, this is going to sound like me being belly aching, but I think it's a lot easier to to get better nowadays. You know what I mean? The fact that you could just tattoo and you can do your thing.
Well, it is, and then
you can go online and pick up little tricks of the trade.
That's what I was just going to say. Yeah.
Look how many seminars are happening. Look how many workshops are happening. And
yeah.
so I think
you had to look so much further back then.
Yeah, tattooers in general are a lot more liable to talk to you openly about what they do.
Right.
There are YouTube, so when I started this channel, I didn't realize how many fucking tattoo channels there were.
Yeah.
It's fucking stupid.
You guys have a lot to say.
Huh? Well, it's funny. You wonder how much of it is they have a lot to say, how many people are trying to cash in on stuff, how many people... I mean, to me, like I said, this is more about a learning experience. Yeah. I hope, getting closer with my friends. So far, it's been the people I've talked to or have been close friends or acquaintances and stuff, but I'm hoping to get connected to people I don't fucking know, and pick up something from them, from that perspective. So I think it's just easier for people to kind of pick up on stuff than it ever has been. Absolutely. And anybody who tells you that it's not true is fucking lying, because it really is. I mean... Well,
it's probably people that didn't know how hard it was back in the 90s.
No, and that's the thing. When Tom and I were talking earlier, when you looked at something that somebody had done, it had never been done before.
Right.
And you looked at it and you went, holy shit. I remember the first time I'd seen a color portrait was from Carrie Barber, of all people. She was doing a guest spot on the island, and she did a color portrait of a wedding portrait of a woman. And literally, two weeks later, a dude came in and he wanted a color portrait of his kid. And he had come up to me, and I'd only been tattooing, I think, 3 years, maybe 4. And I did my first color portrait. And I'll be honest with you, I got to see it 15, 18 years later.
Yeah.
I mean, it looked like a 15, 18-year-old tattoo, but there was still color in it. So I didn't feel horrible about it. I was just like, cool.
Nice.
You know what I mean? So, but it was one of those things, I shouldn't say I probably wouldn't have attempted it, because I wasn't arrogant, but I was an artist that wanted to become better.
Right.
And I knew the only way we became better is when you did it. I'd been tattooing maybe 3 months when I did my first portrait. I did a John Lennon portrait.
Oh my God. See, I'm the exact opposite of that. I am from the approach, if somebody can do it better than me, and I know they can, give the client the better.
Oh, but this is in a day when that didn't exist.
Right.
On Long Island especially, it's first of all, you never let anybody leave the shop.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And if someone came to you and they wanted it, that guy was just my boss was like, no, fucking do it. And I'm like, I've never done a portrait. But to me, I was like, okay.
Yeah. Well, and back then people weren't, as they didn't know what the client didn't
know
there was if they were missing out on a
the
better
other thing too is there wasn't the expectations you have today.
Right, because now they have the TV shows
exactly.
and everything.
Not only TV shows, social media, just in general.
Yeah.
You can look at... I mean, I'll do something where I'm just like, you don't want me to do this because I know what you expect and I ain't your guy.
Right.
You know what I mean? I mean, I'll do it if they understand this is what I'm capable of, and it's not going to look what they think it's going to look like. But again, the expectations for clients nowadays are completely different than what it used to be.
Crazy. Well,
because people expect it to look like it's under a filter in real life.
I know. Or under gel.
Yeah, exactly. Oh God, that's the most amazing thing. You're gussying up a tattoo that's this fucking big.
All you have to do is walk out with slime on your
arms
all the time
and have everybody wear goggles as they watch you fucking walk down the street.
So let me ask you a question though, just from what you were saying. When was the last time that somebody current or whatever in the recent years did blow your mind with something new as a tattooer?
Oh God, all the time, I think. I mean,
something really new where you're like, oh my God, I never thought of that.
Something really new. You had, is his name Tofi? He's like Eastern European. I met him in Germany years ago. He was doing some real kind of crazy, surrealistic, figurative stuff.
Okay.
Where it was just the surrealistic imagery with mainly figurative or faces or whatever, and just blocks of color. I was definitely blown away by that initially when I first seen it, but in small doses, because too much of it I was just like, First of all, I'm not really attracted to the imagery.
Yeah.
I
think it's just something different.
Exactly.
And fun.
And I think when it first started to change, it wasn't so much the tattooing aspect of it. It's more of the layout and the design aspect of it. When people were doing stuff that, it would just look like a beautiful painting.
Yeah.
Or a beautiful ad. It just looked like really cool imagery that was just put together. It may not have been the tattooing I was blown away by, or maybe I looked at it and was like, man, that's a beautiful fucking layout. I don't think it doesn't really work as a tattoo.
Right.
I'm more impressed by that kind of stuff. And then you had artists like Victor Chill that just, I love the animated style. I'm more impressed by, like Tony Ciavar just put this new magazine out called Skin Paper Paint.
Yep. Yeah, we saw it.
You saw it at our shop probably, yeah. And I love new school. I love animation. I love color stuff, That it's not so much the difference of style that they're working in. I think it's just not the difference of style. It's just the drawing techniques.
Yeah.
Like everybody has such a cool, unique thumbprint.
Yeah.
That's what I'm most impressed by. That I look at and I'm like, oh my God, that is so fucking cool. And for the most part, it all follows the general basis of a good tattoo. Where when you look at color realism or black and gray realism, while that is very impressive to look at, I really don't care.
Right.
And I'm not putting down color realism or black and gray realism.
Well, it's not challenging.
Yeah, to me, I have a hard time. One person once told me, a guy I used to work with, I'm not going to mention his name. He mentioned once, he's like, oh, well, you just got to put the time in. It's not entirely true.
Right.
I mean, it's not entirely untrue, I think, because I think if you spend enough time on something and you're really meticulous and you're careful about it, that you can do that. And I think the amount of people doing that in our trade right now has proven to us that just about anybody can be trained to do something.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And again, not putting anybody down, because I know
Right.
that's like, I should just use that as clickbait, because
Right.
that's going to blow people's minds.
I don't know if that's true, though. Tom and I have this conversation often because I really admire Tom's imagination.
Okay.
I don't have that kind of imagination.
But that's what I admire about his work.
Yeah, it's so
And again,
creative in the ultimate sense.
And the thing with that is the fact that he's such a technician.
Yeah.
That when you look at it, you go, that makes a great fucking tattoo.
Yeah,
And because
100%.
it doesn't technically break any of the rules of good tattooing beyond what he's going to do with it.
Right.
And that used to make great new school tattoos, whatever.
But the thing is, our conversation has been, he has said like that I would be capable of doing that. I just have to like get my brain to think that way or practice or whatever.
Right.
And my point is always like not to disagree with like the school of thought that anybody can do anything as long as they put their mind to it. I don't agree. I am disagreeing with it because I know I can't. Like I don't think in that imaginative kind of way.
So that's not what I was referring to. What I was referring to is the technical abilities.
They can learn the technique, but
the technical abilities of being able to create a color realistic portrait, a black and gray realistic portrait. Maybe not the layouts, because we've seen that too. You've seen something where the portrait looks uber realistic, the hands are amazing, but the layout is shit.
Right.
I think there's something to be said for natural ability.
Well, that's
not natural ability, a natural eye for that kind of creativity.
I think it's huge, and I think it's huge in painting too.
I
don't agree that everybody can be a painter, and I don't mean to blow anybody's hopes and dreams of someday being that.
No, I think
painter,
what sets certain painters apart, what sets any creative
artist,
apart, what sets any creative apart, which is a weird word. I mean, I like the word actually.
Of creative?
Yeah, because it does work on like creative can be food,
sure,
whatever, you
music,
know what I
writing,
mean? Exactly, drink, whatever you do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Drinking.
Yeah, drink and food. Fat fuck. But my point being is like I think that it's that spark.
Yeah.
That's going to set that person apart from everybody else.
Right.
There's a reason why Victor Chill stands out amongst what he does. There's a reason why
Tom Strong stands out.
Right, exactly. That's my point. Because he does what he does, and it's recognizable.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we touched on earlier is the fact that when in tattooing especially, if you stand out, it could very well hurt you. You know what I mean? Because
then you're getting a niche crowd.
Exactly. Yeah. And the crowds become more and more niche.
Well, and from our travel experiences, tattooing is different all around the world. What's popular in America is not necessarily going to be popular in the Netherlands or in England or Australia or whatever. And that is what we learned because Tom was at his peak in the States when we left and moved to the Netherlands. And when we got there, it was kind of like a full stop because there they were into like black and gray.
Yeah, they were into black and gray
any
realism.
color,
Yeah, exactly.
Lots of realism, and that is not what Tom does.
Right.
That's when we had a lot of time, kind of inadvertently, but it was really precious time in hindsight to pick up on painting abilities
Exactly.
and make ourselves better at a different form of art, which was fantastic. And then going to England, it was the same deal. Like, first we were in the northeast England. I always switch up the northwest.
Well, before we get there,
okay,
the first realistic painting you did was the painting that's hanging above the door there.
no, so
I shouldn't say it. The first one with the hands.
the first one with the hands. Well, not even then, because there's one behind you that I did in the States before we ever moved overseas.
Okay.
There's one that I did of Tom where he's kind of striking like a metal pose that I did in the States.
I think I remember that too. I think I remember seeing that. Yeah.
He's like throwing the horns.
Are these anywhere that people can see?
No, online,
Yeah.
you mean? No, I can post them on Instagram. When this comes up, I'll put
maybe we'll
pictures
do that.
of them
Yeah,
up
exactly.
so everybody can see them. And they're fine starts. Like,
So they're the beginning of realism.
they're kind of the beginning of where I wanted to go. I've almost always leaned towards realism. So when I first started painting, honestly, I've been painting forever. My first painting set that I clearly remember was, this sounds so privileged. I was camping in Paris with my parents.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
I know, there's no other way to say it though. But we were in Paris, and I got my first watercolor set, and inappropriately I had nothing but canvas to paint on because my parents didn't know what to get me.
Inappropriately, they just got her the best.
But it was canvas.
Was it
for
linen?
Watercolor. Hello. Luckily, I didn't say that to them at the time. And all I did was paint horses and trees.
Could you imagine the talk about privilege? Mom,
Yeah.
Dad,
This is
canvas, watercolors.
And they got me like a little easel. It was a pretty amazing start. But when I got into high school, I started trying to be more like a fantasy realm painter.
Okay.
Like, I painted in my bedroom on my walls and had like a big dragon with a sunset, and one of the paintings was like clouds turning into eyes, and then I had all of the words to Jane's Addiction 3 days.
Oh my Christ.
Which is a 10-minute long song.
Went into your closet.
Yeah, seriously. And then after that, I think I just gravitated towards realism.
And how old were you back then?
That was high school years. That was when I was living at my
15,
parents'
16,
home. Yeah. And then probably when I got into my 20s is when I started going towards realism, and initially misusing watercolor a lot. I wasn't grasping
Yeah, if you're not
technique.
I would imagine unless you're incredibly, unless you can glean stuff on your own, and you're not well trained, it's going to be difficult to kind of.
It is
pick up
you
on
don't really
nuances
know
of
how to
style of mediums. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And for me, Tom, the one thing that he does like reading, because he had said to you before, he has
read
read
much,
a lot. Yeah. His words, not mine. He does like reading about art techniques,
Right.
and I like reading everything else except art techniques. So it's great because he could
So
give
the two of you guys can just sit down and he can do all the legwork, and you could just do all the.
Yeah, I get
gleaning
the
of
easy
that. So it's just Tom's your social media basically.
Yeah, well, I was gonna call them my what's the old yellow and black books, crib notes, or
the painting for dummies.
he kind of
Yeah.
yeah. So anyways, he can cut through all of that work and
All the
give me
bullshit.
the good hints, but I went through watercolor and then I got into oil. And again, not using the paint the way that I probably should have.
Not traditional, yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of these paintings from back then, which would have been maybe 2012, 2000. I think I have one here from 2009 even. They now, to me, when I see them, look like an underpainting.
They're not completed.
It's just I didn't know until. So back then we had our kids, and I was busy being at home and doing what I could with them, and taking less time to paint and figure out what I even wanted out of painting. And I didn't even know what I should do. Like where.
Well, I mean, I would imagine too. Back then, if you originally started as a tattooer and then had regular jobs, and now you find yourself in like in a homemaker's kind of like role,
right?
But still enjoy painting and stuff. I mean, you would look at it as a hobby, not so much as a career.
Definitely.
Yeah. Because I remember when we went to visit you guys a couple of years before you left the States. My wife and Alethea and I, we stayed. I know. Jerk. We stayed at your house, and like I said, we saw the chicken painting and the painting of you holding the beer. And I'm like, "Who did these?" And he's like, "Oh, Jackee did it." Like, what the fuck? What?
Yeah, I mean, no, it's crazy because and this is pre-social media, really.
No, most certainly.
Nobody knew,
and that's why we didn't get to see it.
Yeah, nobody knew I painted. Nobody knew. I mean, when I started showing my paintings once we moved overseas, you'd be amazed how many people were like, "Wait, you paint? You're an artist?"
Well,
like,
I was like that again.
Knew.
I was like that because at that time I think you had started doing the bags.
I was doing leather bags and stuff.
Yeah. So I just figured that was your outlet. I didn't know you were a painter or an artist. I also didn't know you tattooed until well after.
Well, and the thing is like I was nervous about all of it and never felt solid in any of it, and it took me a really long time.
You are really like fucking fragile.
Thank you.
When it comes to like, it's true. It's like I remember you once saying, "It's like I just don't want to deal with people."
It's more like it's probably okay. I don't know. Current generation doesn't make sense. Younger people now, I think, are a lot better at recognizing anxiety, and back like when I was going through learning who I was and what I want to do and whatever, we didn't really like use the term anxiety for anything.
Because you were a fucking adult and you fucking dealt with shit the way adults
we
deal with
did,
shit.
but the way I dealt with stuff back then was like hiding and doing it. Avoidance. Yeah. And I mean, I had a hard time using the word artist if somebody asked me who I was or what I did, because I was
because at that
can
time,
I even call myself
but again,
an artist?
I mean, I've often said, like, people, my mom and dad were just like, how are you gonna make a living? And I'm like,
right.
Well, tattooer, like,
yeah.
Or before that, when I was airbrushing and creating art and painting on T-shirts and jackets, and like, you can't make a living doing this. I'm like, doing pretty good.
But
they don't get that. There's a generation that doesn't understand that.
It's absolutely right, but also the difference was I wasn't supporting us with my artwork. It was being done in a back room,
right,
under like
the
light of.
Well, again, I think that part of it comes to the fact that you didn't realize you could.
I didn't have the confidence to show it, and I had surrounded myself with a bunch of fantasy type artists or illustrators, and I was the only realist in the bunch. And so every critique I got was like, kind of like, why don't you do this? Like, why don't you make... Like, it wasn't anybody understanding my vision or what they might consider a lack of vision, because I didn't share the same creative viewpoint that they had.
Right.
To me, like, what I like is just pulling a piece out of time and painting it.
Right.
Like, but for everybody that I was surrounded with, their creative level was so different from mine that I think it came across as me feeling very unconfident about what I did. So then I didn't like to show it. I didn't like to... It took a lot for me to
really kind of get it out there and show it out to people.
Yeah. And even years after, like, we moved, it still took a lot for me to say to somebody like, hey, I'm a painter, I do stuff. And now I feel a lot more confident about it. And probably it is due to good feedback online.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's something you can't avoid it, and you can't deny it. I mean, the fact is like, people tell you not to rely on it. Like, don't feel bad when people don't like your shit. And again, I think part of that comes from a younger type of person who is gonna put all of his eggs in that basket of self-gratitude or the relying upon somebody, like throwing praises at you, because that's what people expect.
Yeah.
And when they don't get it, they flip the fuck out.
I mean, and I get it. I totally understand. Even for my posts, Posting online is there's so many things that go wrong with it. What time of day was it? How long has it been since you posted? I'm so over that shit,
man. Yeah, it's sickening.
Yeah, so
it
like
really
you can't count on numbers at all. Sometimes I get really great numbers, and sometimes I don't get really great numbers. I started doing I really like the feature from Instagram that just says liked by others.
Okay, yeah.
Because
you're not relying upon seeing how fast the numbers are going up.
Yeah, it just says others, and I'm like great, people are seeing it.
Well, because you know as well as I do, a lot of people may go to those pages and look at it, and they want to see how many people liking stuff.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
I mean, shit, we did it before when we were talking. I was talking about people were asking about the posts for this YouTube thing, and people were just you were asking like, well, how many people liked it? How many people tuning in? How many?
Well, and I was curious.
Well,
because if they are, like, what time of day are you doing? What are you doing that's different from everybody else? That's the first thing you said. Yeah.
Well, what time of day did you put?
Yeah.
And again, I've done it on different aspects, and I don't think I don't really know if it matters.
Well, and even if you get the most numbers ever, it doesn't translate to anything.
Well, so because you know why? It's this. All right.
Well, it's free entertainment for people to see something that they like.
Yes.
And it's not translating to support for the artist that's putting it out there.
Yes.
And I've told you about the book that I'm reading, attempting to read, called Filter World. It's about algorithms, and it's about how a lot of things are being homogenized when it comes to artistic style, because the algorithms are telling you what to like. So they're going... Like, oh, you liked this, that, and the other. Well, you're going to like this. And then they're never challenging you, because if they throw in something that's too diverse, that's not going to get the numbers that are going to make...
And that's what's aggravating with the world we live in today. And this is something I've said millions of fucking times, so people have heard me say it. The aggravating thing comes from the fact that here we are, we're putting our stuff out there, and an algorithm, something that's not even human... or an AI that's play acting at being human or whatever, that's deciding what you see, whether or not you should see it.
Right.
You know what I mean? And whether or not you should even like it.
Well, and it's only deciding it based on what you've liked before.
No, I get that.
So it's never giving you anything new.
If all you're seeing is these little bits, and that one thing that you might have liked slips by on that quick thumb up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That you sit there and it's like, well, nobody's really you're only being immersed in what they're allowing you to see.
It's making you and everybody else out there
lazy and...
Well, I don't think... It's not necessarily making you lazy, because I don't know that everybody knows they should be looking for more. I think it's just assuming that you are like a single... I don't know the words to put it. Like a single plain person. You
don't have any depth. You have no dimension.
And it's like... It's not... The unique artists, like how you said, the more unique you are, the less work you're getting, your niche, and less people are going to want what you're doing. But those people that want that aren't being shown that online because they've fallen...
Oh, most certainly. And the worst part is...
They've been tracked by the algorithms.
Exactly. But I also think that other people are being dumbed down to not to think beyond what they're being shown.
So some people take advantage of it in that way, where they're like, I'm going to fit into the algorithm, and I'm going to be seen. And then other people don't know they're being taken advantage of, and they're not looking any further, and then anything that's unique is not slipping by. And I'm not even putting myself in that world of being unique. I've told Tom a million times I'm a very digestible artist. I
think anytime you do realism, you're gonna have an audience that they're gonna be. I'm attracted to it.
I mean, anybody like. My work can appeal to anybody. You don't need to be an artist. You don't need to be of a certain mind to be able to see my work.
No. I think more people that come into my shop with the painting that you had done on my hands, and even the paintings that are hanging, the prints that are hanging at Ordinary, when people find out that they're attracted to the imagery, obviously,
right?
But when they find out their paintings, their fucking minds are blown.
Yeah.
But you sit there and it's like, what do you think it was? And they'll go, dude, I just thought it was a photograph. I'm like, why the fuck would I put a photograph of my own fucking hands on the wall?
Right.
Like, I just like, but that's the thing is, but that's how maybe a layman thinks, or I was gonna say lame, but someone who doesn't get it, like they don't realize it. It's like, yeah, dude, there's so much amazing creativity out there. It's like, that's what I'm attracted to as an artist,
right?
And now you've just seen it, and your mind has been blown. Did it affect you?
Right.
Are you now going to look at things in a different light? And
Right.
that's kind of I think for me, that would be the attraction and the cool part of what it is that you do, is when people realize that, oh, that's a painting, and they're like, no fucking way.
Yeah.
And they're going to look at things in a different light.
And if they could see them at their size, like people usually are surprised. The paintings are only maybe, this usually or so. But when you're looking at it on the size of a screen,
I think that's I agree wholeheartedly.
Very hard to see any
when you look at your paintings in person.
Anything,
like I can't wait till you finish that painting for the owl shop in New Zealand. Like, because people are gonna lose their fucking minds.
It's so nice. The only time I've ever seen people really experience my work in person was at the London Tattoo Convention.
Yeah,
and I mean, I was blown away and so touched by how much people appreciated my work. Gil Zachary, of whom I adore, when he came over and looked at my work, and he was so excited because he said he could see brush strokes. I was like, yeah, you can in real life, because like it's not photographs.
Nothing ever replaces seeing art live, I think.
It is. It's
and
huge.
the shame of it is, I think the internet has made people just not care.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because
it's free entertainment. And we all have like a 5-second attention span.
Well, that was one of the reasons I walked away from TikTok years ago, is because you're not
a teenage girl.
No, you can feel your brains turn into shit.
Right.
Like literally, you could feel it happening because you're so quick. I was watching a lot of political stuff. There was a lot of shit coming through.
But we're being fed with too much stuff.
Exactly. And again, first of all, I don't want to say that I can handle it, because I honestly don't know if I can.
Right.
I think that part of the reason I'm turned off by it is because my brain doesn't work that way. And I honestly don't want it to work that way.
Yeah.
I mean, I used to, before TikTok and even now with a lot, I used to read a lot more. You know what I mean? And now I'm back into it now. I'm reading more than I did, say, 2 years ago. And I honestly believe it's because it's you pull back from social media a little bit. The problem I think I have with pulling away from social media too much is the fact that we do rely on it for some sort of advertising.
You're absolutely right. I mean, the only way I sell my paintings right now is through social media.
Yeah. And that sucks.
It does. It sucks that I'm reliant upon it in those regards. For a while I've been making, and that's the thing, is like TikTok all of a sudden made people want video. And video is difficult because then I'm not just doing what I want to do, which is painting. Yeah. I'm setting up a camera. I'm getting all the light right.
Yeah, Tom and I talked about this before. It's the same thing.
Yeah, and then I have to like upload it after. I have to stop like an hour early so that I can like edit it and get the sound out, choose the music, whatever, and get it to be the right amount of time, speed it up, like not give away too much for free for people that just want to learn from my process. Like, you know, I mean, it's such a crazy balancing act. And again, it doesn't translate to people buying my prints.
I was going to say, it doesn't translate to dollars and cents.
No, so I've kind of tried to stop with the videos because like all of a sudden I've felt very like I'm feeling detached from what I really just want to do. Like I'm not a social influencer. I'm a painter. Yeah. And it's hard to make those two worlds mesh together and stay relevant and support myself at the same time, you know, like... You need
to be the person that could do it all.
Yeah. It's I need to be able to hire somebody to just do all the other
so
shit
that
for
was,
me,
again, that was
I'd
something...
have to be way the fuck more successful.
That was something I've talked to other people about, and they were just like, if it weren't for that other person to help, they'd be fucked.
Right.
You know what I mean? And me, I have a manager at our shop, and if it weren't for her, if it weren't for Tiff, I'd be fucked.
If I was like the type of artist that had a bunch of like underlings that could paint for me, I'd be like, let's get
back in the day, fucking, you get yourself some fucking what they don't call them? What do they call? What do they call?
Probably not underlings.
They're not apprentices. I was kidding. I was gonna say droogies. But the idea, like, if you could get something like that, but again, you need to make money in order to make that work.
Yeah, and again, if you have that kind of
money,
it's like it's insane how much a person has to do for themselves. I do all my own prints.
Yeah.
I do Tom's prints. Like we do all of our own photographing, and then on top of it, all the editing, all the posting, all the shipping, all the everything.
Right.
As well as just having a normal life. Like you have to think about, like, I also make all of our food, and now we've got a puppy. And,
Oh,
you know, like, I mean, our life, and both of us are trying to have a career in tattooing as well.
Exactly.
Like, there's so much fucking stuff that, like, every second
You
is full
try
of
to
emails
make it, yeah.
and...
You try to make it work. And I think that's why, you know, sometimes, a lot of times it was easier to make your mark when you were younger. You know what I mean? Because I remember when I first made it, got on the scene, I was in my early 20s. You know what I mean? I was able to travel like crazy. I was able to work till fucking 10, 11 o'clock at night.
You mean when you had energy?
Well, it was energy, but also no responsibilities.
Right.
I had rent and a car payment.
See, but I always had responsibilities. I had my daughter when I was 19.
And that's what I'm saying.
Like,
you can't. I can't compare myself to you at all.
Yeah.
You know? But my point being is, a lot of times that's what sets a lot of artists apart. Like,
absolutely. I think that and just the right moment.
Yeah.
The right meeting.
Yeah.
The right...
I'm a firm believer in dumb fucking luck.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that's like, you know, it's funny. Like, they had the IMC in the Illustrators Masters class in Massachusetts. And I got to do it. I took it one year. It was about 2016 maybe. I will admit, I did the best painting I've ever done, in my opinion. It's hands down the best painting I've ever done. Because it was one of those things you're almost accountable for what you're putting on paper, on board at that event.
Right.
And you're surrounded by all these tremendous illustrators. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
They're all working in the field. They've all got jobs in the business. They're doing what they do. It'd be the equivalent of, like, like a good tattooer who actually works for a living and has something honest to tell you and explain to you. I think that's been watered down dramatically. When you've got somebody who's been tattooing for 4 fucking years, does it really well, and he's going to tell you how to fucking live your life, yeah, go fuck yourself. You don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
You know, it's working for you right fucking now. Talk to me in 2 fucking years.
Yeah.
But the point being is, these are illustrators that are making a living doing this. And again, they will be the first to admit you too. Yeah, it doesn't work anymore.
Right.
Like, the way we made our name, and that's something I've often told people. The way I made my name, this is what I did. You can take everything I'm telling you right now with a grain of salt, because none of that's going to work.
Right.
Because it is a different fucking world.
Right.
And I don't honestly believe that the people who have made the name for themselves, or have the name for themselves today, can tell everybody, this is what you need to do. Because you know as well as I do, it doesn't work for everybody.
Right.
And again, I'm jumping ahead of myself. To get back to the IMC thing, we did a thing for, I forgot the name of the gallery in New York, but the curator for that gallery is up there, and he's telling people how they need to do, what they need to do to get into galleries, what they need to do to make a name for themselves in galleries, and all this shit, right? Now you're talking to literally 150, no, it wasn't 150, it's probably about 90 people. Okay. And then the people that are teaching the class, which is like another, like, maybe 18 artists, you know what I mean? And this guy's telling everybody to do it. And I'm listening to it, and I'm like, yeah, this all makes sense, dude. And I get it, but you know full well, if 100 people in this room did exactly what you're saying, maybe 5 of those people will get somewhere.
Yeah.
So I raised my hand. I'm like, hey, can you tell me how much dumb fucking luck plays into this equation? And he looked at me like, what are you talking about? I'm like, just what I said.
Yeah.
How often does it come down to the day that the artist comes to your gallery and you happen to have had a drink, or maybe you're just feeling, you're feeling like, let me help somebody out today, or you're feeling extra charitable. But how many times does that come out where you actually talk to an artist?
Right.
And how many times did you go into that same fucking room angry and pissed off and not wanting to talk to anybody?
Right.
And that same artist was in that room. So one day you would have given him a break, the next day you don't.
Yeah.
So how often does that take part?
Yeah, or the art just falls in your lap. Like okay,
Yeah.
So Tom and I recently went up to Principal Gallery.
And this is a perfect example of what I've just said, yes.
Yeah, like in Alexandria, and the artists they have there, I'm a huge fan of multiples of them. And we went up there to see a couple pieces in particular, and we ended up talking to a person that works there who is this really lovely guy. And but it's like we had this really wonderful conversation where eventually I got to say, like, oh, I'm a painter as well. And then Tom, of course, was like encouraging me eventually, like, show him your work.
Mm.
And this guy was saying, and I did show him my work, and he really liked my work, and it would be amazing if something happened of that, but I don't know if it ever will. But more to the point, he was saying that for their group shows, they pull from sometimes they go to this International Guild of Realism. Igor is what they're shortened as. Funny. And I was like, oh, that's weird. Like, I kept getting messages from Igor and ignoring them on my Instagram because I was like,
who are they?
Who the fuck is this? Like, I literally was like, I am not going to do this because it's like probably some fucking scam or whatever.
It's a scary time to think about this.
Yeah. And then here I find out it's a legitimate thing. And then I ended up joining Igor after because I would love to work with galleries more and have my work out there in the wild to be seen by whatever the right person is. But up until that point, I've been kind of like in the position of just waiting for something to come to me. Like everybody else out there, like you want to be discovered.
Yeah.
And it's hard to even know how to put the work in to get yourself seen. And this was one of those moments where I was like, oh, you actually do have to put the work in to get yourself seen, like going and talking to these people and doing what I am unfamiliar with, which is talking about yourself and being like, look at this, look what I do, like to try to attract them to what
20 years ago you could have just done you, and as long as you were out and about making the rounds at art shows, whatever, you could have been discovered.
But now everybody across the world
today it takes a little bit more again, unless dumb luck comes in and you happen to step in the right.
I don't even know how much dumb luck there is versus like who you know. Like what's luck and what is a chain of events?
So that's a very good point too. That was something else I brought up recently with somebody where I said, hey man, like how important is it to be part of a clique?
Yeah.
Like how important is it to be part of a group of individuals that are actually willing to look out for one another?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like when you're working in a tattoo shop, somebody comes in, wants a portrait. You don't do portraits. Oh, we have a portrait guy. Go talk to him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So again, I think that's a really important thing. When you're surrounded by other like-minded individuals, other creatives, you know what I mean? One of the things I've noticed in social media right now with these influencers, like these chefs and these cooks and whatnot, they're doing all this crossover stuff. Right. And you've got like, a chef from Italy, and a chef from the United States, and they go, hey man, why don't you come out to the United States, stay with me for a couple of days, and we'll do some cross promotion stuff, and we'll do the same thing when we go out there. And they're doing these really creative skits. I mean, it's entertaining, like I said, it's straight up entertaining. It's got nothing to do necessarily with the food that they're creating, but now you're bringing two totally different worlds together, and their fans are seeing you as fans, and it's, before you know it, it's like you've just doubled your fucking, well, probably not doubled, but put extra 25-30% of followers in your fucking pocket and maybe fans. So I think that's a really important thing. And I think with artists in particular, there's definitely, it's better to be part of a pack, more so now than ever.
It is, well, and I think maybe even beyond that, because I never considered Tom and I part of any packs. I think we're always sort of a little bit outliers because we're very like... we're very individual.
Well, agreed. But what I said to him before was the fact that the fact that you guys are as tight as you are. Yeah. The fact that you're able to piggyback one another's works. Yeah. Or careers or thoughts. Yeah. Is a big deal.
We definitely help each other out in that way, and I think that's where I would see it as more than being a part of a pack is supporting other artists. Right. Like even if they're not necessarily part of your clique, like I would be very willing. Here, on the tattoo end of things, if there's something I can't do and I know somebody in town can do it, I would be like, go to them. Go to the shop. And even if I don't know the person, I would be happy to say that because I know with the position every tattooer is in out there and every artist is in out there, anybody needs the work coming in. Look
at comedians and actors guilds. You know what I mean? Like these are they're part of are they considered guilds, clubs, whatever? But they're groups, they're part of these things where they do stuff together. They'll have group art shows together. Or someone will come to them and say, hey, we're looking for this. Illustrators do that all the time.
The International Guild of Realism. That's what they do,
and
too.
We get right back down to that. So you go back to Igor. And before you know it...
Igor makes more sense. I was saying Igor like it's a name.
That's because you're proper.
I think Igor is better.
I'm pretty certain that's how you say it. Just saying.
Igor's like the guy with the hunchback,
with the hunch.
Right?
Oh God.
But they do have group shows for all of the realist artists, and so they are in that same sense.
And they're going to attract. They're going to attract a certain type of people that. And again,
and they're going to get curators looking. And,
exactly. One person's fan is going to come to that, and they're going to see your stuff or somebody else's stuff.
Right.
And before you know it, that's how you build. And that's what I mean by clique.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
So call it clique, guild, group, whatever.
Clique, I guess I'm still like back in my high school years, and I'm like, ugh.
Well, I mean, the reason. Okay, so the
Guilds.
reason why.
Let's call it a guild.
But I will be honest with you. The reason why I started using the word clique is because of younger tattooers.
Sure.
And to me, that reminds me of high school.
Right.
Because again, we had these groups in my day, back in the day as well. You had the traditional guys. You had the black and gray fine line guys. You had the black and gray traditional guys. Whatever. You had all these different groups, but they weren't children of today.
LARPing group?
Yeah, LARPing groups. Frick. But the fact is, it's like they weren't the kids of today.
Right.
And again, I use the word kid loosely because some of these people are adults. Like they're 30-year-old people that still live the life of a child.
You know, the thing is, in the tattoo field, I feel like it's always been so click driven, but it's
I agree
the board.
wholeheartedly.
I think it's going to be in every single field out there. Humans innately go to their own kind. Cliques are across every single.
It's tribes, whatever you want to call it.
Whatever it is, and it's always somebody always feels like they're on the outside of that.
The difference between tattooers of back in the day versus today is. Like today, someone's going to attack you online. They're going to attack you socially.
Yes.
Back in the day, they'd take a brick and throw it through your fucking front window and then set your fucking shop on fire. So the difference is, I think, today, there's less fear of retaliation.
Yeah.
Where back in the day, you didn't say shit about that motherfucker.
Yeah.
And if you did, you made sure nobody found out it came from you.
I think people should be held more accountable today for what they say.
I think
people
so
still
as well.
have fucking feelings. Just because it's online doesn't mean it's a hurtful
I've had
fucking
people.
thing.
Well, so Pond brought that up. He's like, man, even though we're on fucking television, I don't want to say we're soft skinned, but like we're people.
And creatives do have a tendency to be a little bit sensitive.
I mean, even me, so we brought that up, and I said to him, I was like, dude, I got called out for a bunch of shit that was like clickbait online.
Yeah.
Things I had said that was a small portion of the entire conversation, and these motherfuckers came out like rabid animals,
right, attacking
me. And I read everything, and I'm like, every single fucking one of them, I wanted to come back and be like, you know what, go fuck yourself, you fucking whatever. And I didn't. I was like, you know what, man? It's the internet. It's Instagram. Who gives a fuck?
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I care. But by the same token, it's like, whatever, dude. Like, the fact is, there's for as many people who are going to hate you, there's just as many people that love you. And vice versa.
Well, and very true. I've been fortunate to have a lot of people, I've had almost nothing but support. Any comments I've ever had on my work that's been mean, I've deleted. Because I'm like, I have to delete it from my head. I'm not going to say anything back. I'm not going to start
There's a bunch of stuff on my thing that I just left up. I left people.
I delete it because I'm too anxiety ridden. I can't handle it. And it's only been in these later years that I've been very easy with posting because I just kind of don't give a fuck anymore. Yeah. But back in the, since I started painting a lot more, 2015 or whatever, I was I would take 40,000 fucking photos to be which is the best, most ideal angle, lights too much here, asking Tom, take an hour to decide what music, and then
oh God, yeah,
I would just be so who is gonna say something mean? That's all, all of the niceness that would come doesn't matter. Is somebody going to say something mean? Because that's what's going to really fuck
Well, I'll be
up.
honest with you. I think, and again, human nature, being an artist, whatever, sometimes you read the comments just because. Every now and again, you'll see a picture or something that you go, oh, I can't wait to see what the mob has to say about this.
I don't read the comments.
I do. I don't do
it
it as often.
It makes me anxious for everybody.
Yeah, no, I agree. But every now and again, I can't help myself. Or someone will go dude, did you read the comments on such and such post? And I'm like,
yeah.
Oh God, I gotta check it out. And you do. You read it because it's entertaining.
I mean, there's times when I've seen some comments that have been highlighted where I'm just happy people are still really funny. Because sometimes the comments are hilarious on stuff, but the mean ones, I'm just I can't.
I get it. It's totally understandable, but I think it's part of the world we live in right now. You know what I mean? And it does suck. I mean, it is a shitty. It is a shitty world to live in.
It
in
is
some cases.
because they've disassociated.
Yes.
They've stopped considering people on the other end of that computer line to be
But
human anymore. It's like all of a sudden everybody's a robot.
Those same people are getting just as much out of trying to tear you down.
Right.
You know what I mean? They're getting just as much out of that as you are from the praise that you're getting from other people.
Right.
So it's like...
Which is funny because, again, everybody's been very nice to me.
Oh, no,
like,
I'm sure.
I've never had mean people. Like, thankfully, all of these wonderful
because
followers
it does come to a point where it's like, what are they going to say? What are they going to say? You know full well that the second they come at you, they're just complaining for the sake of doing so.
Right.
You know what I mean? Or you get some uppity fuck.
I'll delete them. I'm telling them. I'll delete you. Whatever you say that's mean, you're out.
Well, that's the thing. It's like, again, I think it's giving it too much power.
Yeah.
But again, don't get me wrong. It's not like I'm not going to deny the fact that I don't get bent out of shape or
it's hard to let that roll off your shoulders.
Oh, most certainly, especially when you have a mouth and you have an opinion to that person just as big.
See, and I don't do that. Like you've even said that before. Like if I've said something like put it online or whatever. Like I'll complain in private about stuff, but I do not put stuff out online ever about things that I don't like or that I have an issue about because like I can't handle.
I think there does come a point where I feel that you as an individual, as an artist, as a creative, whatever, sometimes you have a responsibility. Like some shit went down in the tattoo community a year ago, 2 years ago, whatever it was, and there was a huge uproar about it, and a lot of people lost their shit. I went live with a couple of people. We said our piece and we walked away. And I will admit that I sat back and I'm like, that may not get over. People are going to take offense. People are going to get mad, angry, or whatever. But I can honestly say the way I look at it from the standpoint of like, yeah, well, you know what? I just made my opinion known to all my friends and fans and family, whatever. I made my opinions known publicly, but I could at least say, yeah, these are all the same fucking things I said to that person.
Right. Well, and that's fair. I think that I'm a more generic life. Like I don't have any opinions super big in the tattoo industry. I don't have any big opinions in the art industry. Right. There's nobody stepping on my toes. Right. That I have to turn around and be like, fuck you.
The difference between you and me is when the shit happened with this guy and his company, I had people reaching out to me like, dude, what the fuck?
Right.
And I don't want to say I feel responsible or I feel like I should say something. The Long Islander in me is like, yeah, I can't help myself.
Right.
Someone needs to fucking say something.
Yeah.
And, I've said this again, 9 times out of 10, it's something I will say to that person, well, in this case, it wasn't to their face. It was via, phone call. But it wasn't through a text.
Right.
You know what I mean? I made my opinion clear to them originally, and then when they reached out to me, I told them straight up, like, yeah, this is bullshit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I wasn't like, go fuck yourself. I was just like, no, this is why I feel this way. I want nothing to do with you. And then weeks later, the shit hits the fan with them, and I'm kind of glad I got to walk away. I got to wash my hands of it.
Right.
And I've had people since then. I was like, well, you're part of it. I'm like, you should have checked fucking before you said that, because while I was part of it, the moment I smelled some fishy shit, I walked away.
Right.
And I didn't even know about all the crazy shit that was going on before that. You know what I mean?
I wish we knew more of this story. You're
speaking
in code, Joe.
It's okay. So if anyone wants to know, it's Tattoo Gate. Okay, it's all the shit from Tattoo Gate and Russ's thing. So if you don't know about it, it's fucking out there. Just fucking Google it. But yeah, it was again. I felt good enough to say I'm good, and I was able to walk away.
That's fair.
Yeah, and I think that's important. I think everybody should have, if you have an opinion and it's viable, then you should make it be known. As long
if
as
I
you're
had
not
an opinion about something that was really affecting me, I absolutely would.
Yeah,
but online. What's affecting me?
Well, and again, online, it's also hard to get lost in shit, and people just taking a little tiny speck of what you say.
Yeah. Well, but again, I think that you've been more of a public figure for a long time.
Therein lies that.
I've been a very background person for a long time. Yeah. As we said, nobody even knew I painted.
Yeah.
Until like 2015.
Right.
I mean, if you look online, my presence doesn't even start till around then, and I'm 48. Like, that's a long fucking time to like...
Well, I mean, but you can't say it's yeah, exactly. But, I mean, look at someone like Bob Terrell, who didn't start tattooing until he was in his fucking 40s or late 30s.
He's an inspiration to all us old people.
Honestly,
Yeah.
I mean, and the fact that he's still crushing it, he's still killing it. I mean, I love
fuck, Aurora, my daughter, she just started tattooing and she's 29 now.
Right.
And she was this is so late. And
I didn't start tattooing until I was 23.
Yeah.
Or 22, 23.
That's so young. Oh my God, that's a baby.
I didn't get my first tattoo, I was 21.
That's a baby. It's so
well,
young.
Because it's also
back then it was older, but now it's
honestly,
super
I think
young.
it was because most of the people I know.
Oh my God. By the time I was 21, I had a 1-year-old, 2-year-old.
Well, that's different. Again, being a woman in that day and age, it was different.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And again, depending on how you grew up.
Right.
You know what I mean? Some women never. I mean, like my wife. I think if it hadn't been for the fact that she met me, she'd have a bunch of kids and live in a much different life. You know what I mean? I honestly don't believe I would have been living much of a different life.
Right.
I honestly believe that I'm living the life that I enjoy, and I almost feel. I think I've told you this before. I feel horrible for my wife. I feel like I've dragged her into some shit that.
She's happily joined you along your side.
I like to believe that. I do like to believe that, but in the back of my mind, I've been so driven, and it's not on a career. I've not been driven on a career. I've just been driven on living my life.
But I think that's like a couple thing too, because there's so many times with like us moving overseas where I'm like, I really pushed that because I come from an international background and I really wanted to move overseas. And in my mind, I'm like, I made Tom do all of that stuff.
But to say that,
Tom's
but
mind,
look what it did to him.
He joined me happily.
Exactly.
And
Look what it
loved
did for him.
And
that's
it's
why
easy as to take it as a thing you promoted, but there's a team. You guys are a team.
Well,
that's
something Alethea always says about you guys is like she admires the fact that you're a team. Our team is a little less, you know what I mean? There's a lot more like kicking around on the sidelines and wandering into the locker rooms in the middle of the game.
There's all kinds of teams.
I know. Some teams are better than others. Some teams make it to the end. Other teams are just there.
Right.
So, but that is a legitimate issue I have with myself, not with my wife.
Yeah.
The issues are with myself.
Yeah.
And I realize that it's a fault of me, not her.
Yeah.
And she puts up with a lot of shit. So she's a very wonderful human being.
She is.
Yeah. So, okay, back on track. I don't want to drag, and I'm glad this didn't go too deep into tattooing. This is nice that it's more about the paint But you have gotten not heavily back into tattooing. I think you would have been more heavily back into tattooing if things had maybe been a little different here.
Well, and I think if we go like all the way back to the beginning of this conversation, tattooing back then caused me a lot of anxiety. And back then I didn't recognize anxiety, and nobody did quite as much as they do at this point. Coil machines were always really hard for me to use. I've got very weak hands, and I feel like
considering how manly they are.
I know how manly they look, not are. They just look more manly. They're still very delicate. But I really struggled, and getting married or marrying a very talented tattooer and having very talented tattoo friends. I've got a realistic eye. I can see a good tattoo, and I know when I'm not capable of doing one. And so there was a disparity, and it gave me a lot of anxiety about it. And so I was really in and out because I just couldn't deal. And so I kept floating between different careers, and painting has been the solid for me,
right.
Especially since I quit everything else. That was a huge thing because I am very creative and I love sewing. I used to make bags. I love anything I can get my hands on.
So you're just a very creative person.
Yeah, and I've got so many facets that I'd like to do, but it wasn't until I quit all of them to start painting that I really excelled in one thing. But then painting got boring by myself all the time, and I wanted to get back into tattooing for the social aspect of it.
I remember you saying that, yeah.
Yeah, and then you turned us on to the machines that we've got now, those nanos, which are really light and honestly like the nicest thing I've used. And then on top of it, kind of the same way I was always trying to figure out what I wanted to be as a painter. I never knew what I wanted to be as a tattooer.
So if I'm not mistaken, when you were in Scotland and you started picking up the machine again.
I did.
You started, like, Tom made it sound like you were going to go down the road of color realism.
Yeah,
because
absolutely, because it was assumed.
Exactly.
This is what you're going to do. And not by him, but just by everybody and by me and whatever.
And you were, you know.
Because I'm a woman. What are our hands good for?
Exactly. You're doing delicate tattoos that are going to fall apart in 6 months.
But yeah, because of my painting. All of it seems like I should be able to do realism tattoos because I've got an eye for realism, but I can't fucking wrap my head around it. I don't know how they do everything. I don't get it.
You know what the worst part, I kind of agree with you. I'm not going to say that I am incapable because I've done, you know, very realistic tattoos in the past.
Right.
I was one of the first people to start doing some realistic stuff back in the day. I just don't care. And my biggest issue also is I know how tattoos age.
Yeah.
How tattoos change.
Yeah.
And I am of the school of thought that I want my tattoo to look like that tattoo for as long as possible.
Absolutely.
And realism tends to have too many variables, too many things that can go wrong, and too many things that can change dramatically or so subtly that I just won't be happy with it. So to me, it's more important for me to have the tattoo look like it did when it was first put in the skin for as long as possible. Also, I want it to look like I did it. And this is something I've had conversations with other people where sometimes you can't tell the difference between 3, 5, 10 realism guys because it's all going to look kind of like that.
Well, if it's all Iron Man, it's all Iron Man. You know, like
exactly.
If it's a particular subject that a client
and
is
that's
choosing.
actually, you know what's funny about that? That's actually a really good way of putting it, because the things that attract me to comic book artists and illustrators and stuff like that is how they approach that subject. Like you said, Iron Man is Iron Man, but if it's drawn by, you know, John Romita Jr. or fucking Arthur Adams, you've got two completely different takes on that character. It's that take on that character that I'm attracted to.
Yep.
If you're going to do the Avengers Tony Stark fucking from the movies,
right,
there's only one interpretation of that, and that to me, while it is impressive, it can be very boring in comparison to the other two artists that are going to me, is what I'm going to be attracted to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's kind of inadvertently the way I was feeling about it. I was like, this is boring. I'm already doing realism for painting and spending 1 million fucking hours on those paintings.
Right.
I don't want to do that for what I was considering my fun time, which is tattooing. So when I get to like be with a person and have a little more social
like
of an
social,
environment,
entertaining, whatever.
Yeah. And then in my paintings, I gravitate towards painting traditional work on people,
right?
Because it's so fun, and it never even occurred to me
to do traditional tattoos.
Yeah, and so that's what I've ended up doing now. Back in trying to tattoo again is like traditional stuff because it's just bold and fun and like one-hit wonders, and you're out. Yeah. Like I fucking love it. Great experiences, couple hours long, and like get on with. Yeah. Life.
I mean, that's why we do the walk-in days at our shop. I'm glad you guys came out for the last one because to me that builds memories for both the tattooer and the fucking client. Yeah, and I think that is
those
really
social environments. It's so much fun.
That's that. To be honest, it's what to me is what tattooing is all about. I think a little bit of it's gotten lost. I'd like to think that people who are watching this are going to maybe kind of start to rethink the way they think about their tattooing experiences.
Sitting in a room with 3 other tattooers, 2 other tattooers that you enjoy, and having like a good client in your seat and bullshitting as much as we've been bullshitting here for the last hour and a half or whatever it's been.
That's the whole fucking point of this.
And it doesn't matter what the tattoo is on that client. They're going to walk away and be like, I fucking love that. Like it's just a good experience. It's a good experience for the tattooer. It's a good experience for the client. Like
exactly.
Tom and I share a room, and we bullshit nonstop.
Oh, you guys talk like motherfuckers.
Yeah, and about the stupidest shit. Nothing matters.
Yeah, but the clients get involved. Clients are talking to one another.
Yeah, it's an experience. People walk away with an experience, and Tom and I walk away being like, "What a fun day."
Exactly. Yeah. Like when you can walk away knowing that sometimes when you have a stressful client, but there's another client in that room or another tattooer in that room, and it kind of takes a little bit of the edge off for you.
Yeah.
And kind of maybe spreads it out and maybe brings out a different aspect of that client where he's no longer such a heavy client to be around. that's a big help.
It's huge, yeah.
And it's not. It doesn't. It's you're not acting like a fucking shitty parent by turning the television on and telling the kid to watch TV.
Right.
You know what I mean? And just pretending that life isn't. Like this is an experience he should be remembering. You know what I mean? Just fucking shut up. Leave me alone and just watch television.
Right.
So I think I think that is something that's lost in several shops.
Yeah.
And again, it's not lost in all. I don't think it ever will be lost in all. I think that tattooers, for the most part, are social individuals. You have to be in order to do what we do and do it well.
Well, and the art of conversation is being lost anyways due to things like text. And I don't necessarily blame the younger generation, because when you're talking about people that are now in their later 20s, they were brought up on texting.
Oh, no, most certainly. And again,
it's hard to learn how to be in a room.
Yeah, I mean,
chat.
I became an adult before the internet. You know what I mean? And
we used to have these things called phone cords that you had to walk around with and
dial phone,
closing a door.
But the fact is, it's like, I get it. I get it. I'm never going to get over sounding like an old man, and I don't care.
Well, no, we're old. I mean, you can own old and you can own experience. And like the kids now, they've got their own experience that's completely unique to them, because I have no idea what it would be like to be a kid now. I don't think I'd do it well. But what I can say is, from our experience, the art of conversation, it needs to be relearned, and people need to learn how to enjoy.
I think it opens up
knowing and chatting and cross barriers. And
it opens up everybody's. It opens up everybody's world.
It brings a guard down, and it helps your client too.
It helps
because they feel more comfortable.
I think it helps you grow as a human being and the experiences and such. I think it's an important aspect of
wisdom.
Just being a person.
Yeah.
Well, it's nothing but.
It's wisdom. Old person wisdom right here.
All right.
Older person, younger person.
On that note, I think that's actually a good place to end, because you're now making fun of my age. Is there anything that you would like to say, that you'd like to add to the conversation, or is there anything that you have coming up that you want to?
What I would add to the conversation is start supporting the unique and weird. Look out there. Like, I'm really inspired by this whole Filter World book. I still have to get through it, but it's got an amazing start. Don't let yourself be homogenized. Don't get what everybody else is getting. Like, just look for the unique and celebrate it, whether it's music or books or art or tattoos or whatever. Like, stand out in a crowd and support people that need it. The weirdos need it the most.
Exactly. The weirdos need it the most. And on that note.
Yeah. Thanks.
This is another episode of Not for Nothing. Thank you very much for tuning in. Like and subscribe. This is Jackee Sandelands. I will put her information in the comments. If you guys have any comments, please leave them. Anything you want to hear, see, or whatever, please do that as well. See you when I see you.
Bye.